Here to debate that are Labour's Stephen Pound and the Conservative MP Peter Lilley. Welcome to you both. How much say do you think MPs should have, given that the people have spoken and the government has agreed to do what the people said?
Well, constitutionally, they can have as much say as they want. I think they should accept the view of the British people and allow the government to negotiate the best possible deal. And when we've got it, I hope they'll agree to it. But nobody can stop them having a vote except the EU. And that was the point David Davis was making. If the EU carry on the negotiations up to the 59th minute of the 11th hour, then come the 1st of April 2019, we will have left. Before there's a vote, we can have a vote afterwards, but we will have left. That's a simple fact.
Yeah, it's good of the EU's fault?
No, I'm rather pro-EU, but no, I think that in many ways, obviously I believe in parliamentary sovereignty, and I think there's without a doubt there will be a vote, though we have to ask ourselves what in God's name happens if, you know, the Brexit is rejected there. But the fact is we've invoked Article 50. So it's not up to us anymore. We've done it. We've withdrawn. You know, we've filed the divorce papers. You know, unless we're going to go back and say, I'm ever so sorry, you know, sort of dog ate my homework or something, and I didn't mean to say that. That's not what I meant. We've done it. Therefore, the transition period, the Labour policy, is now becoming not so much a journey as a destination. That seems to be where we're going.
But isn't the moment of decision not so much whether there's a deal, but the end of March 2019, i.e. when we leave? And wouldn't it be extraordinary if prior to that, perhaps a week before, there wasn't a full parliamentary ratification? Yes, we're going to leave on whatever terms are or are not in place at that time.
It would be utterly extraordinary. I think in years to come, people will look back on these years and think, what on earth was going on? I think history is being made at the present time. There's never, ever been anything like this before. There's never been anything which I think is as catastrophic for the nation as this particular vote. But the idea that we can somehow unwind it and go back and say, no, we want another chance, I don't see that happening because, as I said, we put in the papers.
But Adam, how could you have a vote ahead of the deal on whether it's a good deal or a bad deal, if you don't know what it is?
You can have a vote on, you know, we haven't got a deal, it's a week away, should we be leaving? Surely that's what MPs are there for.
But who would that be binding?
The opportunity to decide that was when the Lisbon Treaty was passed with this clause in it. All three parties offered the people actually a referendum on the constitutional treaty. Two of them subsequently reneged on that, so the Lisbon Treaty went through without a referendum, without much debate, without any serious debate on this clause.
No, we had a referendum, but do you not think there would be a public outcry if we exited the European Union because the government says so, without there being any reference to Parliament?
Well, I don't know whether there'd be a public outcry or not, but that decision, as Stephen rightly said, was taken when we voted to activate Clause 50. Because that's how Article 50 works. It says that after 2 years, with or without a deal, you have left. Now, we want a deal. In all probability, if there is a deal, it'll be some months beforehand. That's the objective of Monsieur Barnier and David Davis, that it be done by October before that. So then there'll be plenty of time for votes. But if it goes on right to the last minute, then there's no possibility for a vote. Nobody's being malign about that. That's how the article is written.
Could it not be withdrawn, though, Article 50?
Well,
you can apply to withdraw it. I mean, there's nothing in Lisbon that says about that, which is...
Well, why not have a vote on that, then, if we haven't got a deal?
Well, we can't. I mean, you need 28 countries actually approve the Lisbon Treaty. I'm not sure we could go back on that. But I think what's happening is here, there is, and people keep saying, we've got to play hardball, we've got to be tough and all that. We are not in a particularly strong bargaining position, but there are certain areas where we are. You know, for example, the EU citizens within the UK, sort of pensions and a whole range of environmental issues, a lot of treaties that are completely uncontentious, that it is in the interest of the other 27 countries to negotiate with us. So we do have some bargaining power. The way we don't do it is at the present time. I have a great deal of respect for Peter, but the Conservative Party is all over the place on this one. We had Boris Johnson at the Belvedere on Tuesday saying to admittedly a room full of Poles, I love you, you'll never have to go, we're going to keep you. And then we've got David Davis saying that Theresa May hasn't read all the excruciating detail of the documents. You know, we actually need a more mature, a more sensible and a more rational negotiating team. And it's unfortunate that the impression in Brussels of our negotiating team is not a positive one.
You think that's fair?
The impression in Britain of the EU negotiating team is not a positive one, They're being extremely legalistic, process-wise, and they're not even following Article 50. Article 50 says the Commission shall negotiate within the framework of a future relationship. You cannot negotiate within a framework if you do not first discuss that. They said, we're not going to discuss the framework within which we're negotiating until after the negotiations. That is clearly illegal. What they're doing is illegal under the European Union. Nobody in this country criticise them because people like you are so pro-you.
I'm not so pro-you.
Of course you are.
It's nothing to do with me.
We know exactly your views from the Sunday Times. But we know your views, and most of the broadcast
I've never
media
expressed a view on whether it should leave. I've expressed a view on the way in which it's being handled by politicians, which is a different matter.
Anyway, it's very clear. Now,
I didn't vote either.
You have never. You have never. You in the collective sense.
Examining how the process goes on.
You in your collective sense of the broadcast media have never challenged the European politicians as to why they're not adhering to Article 50. Any common sense interpretation means they're doing it back to front.
With all due respect, we pointed this out, but the fact of the matter was the British government stated how it wanted the negotiations to take place. The Europeans said they weren't going to go down that route, and the British government then complied. So don't blame commentators. That's what
Any
ministers
suggestion
do.
that you're responsible for the government's policy, I withdraw. But it is clear that the European Union is not adhering to it. We've gone along with that, regrettably. It's not, I suppose we didn't have much option.
Well, Peter, you know, I mean, there is interpretations of it. What you've got to say, in your you're talking about Michel Barnier being sort of strictly legalese. I think your analysis of this is rather strictly legalese. You've got to realise, and you know more than anybody else, that the people we're negotiating with, Verhofstadt and Barnier and co, are looking forwards and behind them as well as the time. There are 27 European countries, and there are issues with those other European countries. You know, we all know about the situations in Hungary and Poland, so they're looking at the implications for the rest of Europe. And while all this has been going on, you had Mario Draghi yesterday in Frankfurt talking about sort of unwinding the bond buying, sort of reducing the amount of quantitative easing or bond buying that they're doing at the present time. The Eurozone is actually in fairly good shape at the moment. So what you're doing is playing three-dimensional chess in a sort of Star Trek where you're dealing with David Davis and Boris Johnson, and you're dealing with the rest of Europe, and you're dealing with the Eurozone.
No, I do want to bring this back to the issue, which is how much role Parliament, as opposed to government ministers or negotiators, should have.
We've given it away. That's the problem.
Parliament endorsed the Lisbon Treaty with this article in it. We're therefore bound by the article, and the article says we have left after 2 years if there's not an agreement. So
does that mean, in your view, that all this discussion of the EU withdrawal bill and all the hundreds of clauses are basically a waste of time?
No, we have to pass our own legislation to enable us to incorporate all existing law in our law. That's the bulk of what the bill does, so that subsequently, when we've left, we can, if we want to, change, improve, withdraw, repeal, amend any existing European law as Parliament wishes. Yeah, that's when Parliament will have sovereignty.
But could you imagine a situation in which the vote it does go the way that I think it probably will at the present time? Then you've got Keir Starmer and David Davis go and see Michel Barnier and say, look, can we have a second chance? We're ever so sorry. Can we actually withdraw that? They would then have to consult with the other 27 countries. Would they do it? I don't know. This is completely new territory constitutionally. But the only way it could work would be if we could then say we wish to sort of abrogate our previous decision and ask you to give us another chance. Can you imagine the reaction in the country if that were the case? Yeah. That's when I think you'd have rioting in the streets.
There would be real problems democratically if Parliament were to try and repeal the decision of the British people to leave.
Or ask for a second bite of the cherry.
There could, I mean, just think about it. One way there could be a change, could be a general election if a pro-Remain Labour government was elected and the Conservative Party was defeated.
You're really desperate to reverse it, aren't you?
No, I'm just...
You may not think you are, but all your questions head in that direction.
No, this is a great national question.
He always gives me a hard time.
This is a
giving him a hard time.
This is a great national question, and what we're trying to talk about is the mechanics of what could or could not happen. Well, and you're the experts here.
We took a decision in the referendum. Parliament then endorsed that by invoking Article 50. We knew what Article 50 said. and Article 50 now happens.
And my feel of the House today is that Dominic Grieve and people like him have gravitas, they have so much respect, that I genuinely believe that the amendment, which actually calls for a vote prior to the final decision, will be carried by the House. That is my feeling. The House of Lords will carry it in 2 seconds, without a shadow of a doubt. But my feeling of the Commons today is that that vote would go against the government.
Well, I think there will be a vote as long as there is an agreement to vote on. But if there isn't an agreement to vote on, there won't be.
And what happens if there is a vote and the government is defeated on the deal which is negotiated?
Well, then we probably leave without a deal.
Well, then things fall apart and the centre cannot hold and mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Nobody was that. We've never been here before. Never even been close to it.
It's the same in any negotiations.
Yeah.
If Parliament overthrows the decision of the executive, then the other side in the negotiation
But couldn't it go
says...
the other way, though? Couldn't it be, if the government deal is defeated, people say, well, in that case, we'll stay as we are?
That's what you want, of course.
That's all right. Look, I don't know why you keep on talking about me. I'm trying to work this out. People say to me, the general public, they say, is there any possibility that the UK could stay in the European Union? I'm asking you, as a former cabinet minister and a senior figure, whether you think there's any possibility.
Article 50 says, of course, that any nation that has left can reapply. And it can reapply on the same terms as any other new member, which means it has to accept the ultimate obligation to accept the euro, membership of the Schengen zone, ever closer union,
free movement,
and integration,
and
free
we'll end
movement.
up, you know, like a pound store Denmark.
So, what do you think? I mean, could a defeat of the government deal by the Commons result in Britain staying?
No.
I think it actually could, but on an extended transition period, with a marvellous fudge, because I don't think ultimately it's in everybody's interest for the European Union to break up.
Okay.
I don't want the European Union to break up. I
Great,
just
let's
want
all
us
agree
to
on that.
leave it.
You want the European... You're talking about the 28, you're talking about the 27.
But I'm a European.
Right. All right, we'll leave it there.